Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cosmic Wizard Show, a show for astrology nerds by astrology nerds. And here we are talking today with Michael Hardigan from One Sky Astrology. And we're talking oppositions again. And this time it's going to be Libra with the Aries axis, of course, as well as Taurus. So welcome. Hello, Michael.
Hey,
Great to have you on.
Hey, everybody.
So one thing that I kind of wanted to open with that has been on my mind so much, in the true sidereal community, right? We got 13 signs, but oftentimes, we're using 12 system houses, most of us anyways, not everyone. But in using 12 system houses, right? Like let's say we want to do whole sign, there's a fusion that happens of two signs. And lots of the times we sort of like fuse Scorpio and Ophiuchus together. But I mean, in ancient times, Libra and Scorpio were part of the same constellation.
That's
I've been thinking about that a lot.
That's true, yeah. I think it was the Romans that separated it because Libra, the scales, was like right around the time they did that, that was right around the autumn equinox. So they felt that the evenness and the equality of that equinoctial sort of like day and night are even. That's what I know about that. If you go back, yeah, Libra was the claws of the Scorpio, and Zeben el Janubi and Zeben el Shamali still mean, the names of those stars still mean the right and left claw. And if you go back even further, to Babylon, and you look at the Babylonian star catalogs and the way they organized the heavens, they saw Libra separate. So the Romans didn't invent that. They sort of resurrected it. And I believe it was the Arabic astrologers who were really sort of in between those two events, kind of carrying that tradition of like and this very elongated Scorpio. So Scorpio used to be a huge sign. But
did it used to be even bigger than just Scorpio and Libra?
No. It used to be Scorpio and Libra, but and then in Babylon, if we go back to when they were observing Libra as its own set of stars, and Scorpio was different. Scorpio wasn't Scorpio; it was the cutter or the raptor. It was an eagle, which is why we have in the tarot cards the hermetic knowledge of the Golden Dawn, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, where mostly what we think of tarot today came from, and that's a side convo. But we see those four creatures, the bull for Taurus, these are the watchers at the corners, the lion for Leo, the angel or the person for Aquarius, the water bearer. And then for Scorpio, we see an eagle. You see this in the world card and you see it in the wheel card. And that symbolism is pointing to the four watchers at the corners.
The royal stars?
The royal stars, that's right. So it's interesting. It's sort of fluctuated, changed a little bit.
So back in Babylonian times, what was Libra then?
That's a good question. And I want to say it had to do with a lot of the way we think of Libra now, but I don't know why I have that idea. If it was a scales, or if it had something to do, or if it was just called like the balance. I don't know. Other people might find out before us because we're because we're doing this podcast. But if you're able to look up, there's a Wikipedia page on the Babylonian star catalogs that lists the what we know from the cylinder seals and the astrological like writings of Babylon. We know their constellations and how they were named, and a little bit about how they were associated.
Okay.
Incidentally, that's not a really interesting rabbit hole, because at that time they weren't using astrology like psychologically and like
Yeah, it's sort of limited
evolutionarily.
for
It
sure.
was like weather and like weather prediction and who will win this war, and like let's hunt when um it was a lot more rudimentary from everything we know.
Quite mundane.
You could say, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Everyday event sort of things. Well, one of my favorite like monikers that Libra has that makes me that like I feel like it sort of evokes the claws of the scorpion is the iron fist and the velvet glove.
Mm-hmm,
That's
mm-hmm,
always made me
mm-hmm.
laugh. And it makes me think of that connection a little bit.
Mm,
And I've been thinking too, Scorpio, like its biggest sort of reputation is about death, right? But with,
mm,
Libra, not only, right? But it's one of
mm-hmm.
the big ones, right?
Certainly a splashy one, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Scorpio in general is pretty splashy, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, if we're thinking about balance in a sort of holistic way, like what is life without death? A little bit,
Sure,
you
sure,
know?
sure. There's some interesting ways that, just like you're pointing to, other sort of complementary, even related, interesting ways that Libra leads like directly into Scorpio. Like it's
Hmm.
really, we can look at that today. I think in this series we've been looking at the star signs as sort of not just fixed things like Libra's long walks on the beach and French pastries, but as as processes. This is the
Yeah.
process between Virgo and Scorpio. So we're moving from one thing, and
Hmm.
then it's a transition. We're moving towards another. So we'll
Yeah, that's
talk
how we're
today
moving
about
through
how
life, right? And last
that's it,
video we
right?
did talk about how Virgo moves into Libra too. So
Mhm.
yeah.
We did, and I like that. I like to think of the signs as like active, dynamic processes and things in motion, things in flux. There are some things you can fix about signs as ideas, like Libra is, certainly about relationships. It generates a desire to have all kinds of relationships.
Hmm.
Um, but in that, like out of that urge, it's actually the imbalance of Libra that leads into Scorpio, because Libra seeks balance. It wants balance, but one of the ways it does that is by experiencing extremes.
Hmm.
Like you pointed to. What was that turn of phrase? The iron fist and the velvet glove.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But that's like a balance, right? That's where we
Hmm.
have both, right? So you have to know the velvet glove.
Hmm.
And you also have to know the iron fist. And no one gets to that scorpionic process of then like going deep.
Yeah.
No, nobody gets there without passing through that Libra and like establishing a foundation. So people think of Libra. Here's a mistake people make with Libra all the time. They think it's very harmonious,
Hmm.
very
Hmm.
balanced, very peaceful. And Librans like to think of themselves as like true romantics who are like, I mean,
But that's
it's
just the velvet glove, that's that
that's
sort of
just the
like
velvet
diplomacy
glove. That's just,
side.
and then you have the Inanna, the Ishtar side of all this, the
Hmm.
scorpionic side of it, the feminine
Yeah.
empowered to.
Like, oh, you're gonna treat this person who can't defend themselves poorly.
That's it. That's it.
Bring out the
Right.
iron fist.
The iron fist. Yeah. So Libra has a lot of claws and teeth. And I think the way Libra and Venus today are thought of is like very, there's a word I'm looking for. It would be the feminine counterpart to emasculated. It would be that feminine counterpart. And I think Venus has been,
Little damsel maybe even.
yeah, Venus has been made into a Disney caricature of herself, right? Where she used to be love and war. She used to be, she used to
Mhm.
be a character as Inanna that the Phoenicians helmed their warships with. This was, no mermaids. It was Venus. Like, look out, we're coming for you.
Yeah.
And we don't think of Venus that way today. Those qualities we've really like dichotomized, and we've put those on Mars. planetarily, but
Oh
they're
yeah, very true. And it's
Venus.
interesting, right? Like if we
Mm,
think about like what's the most dangerous thing in the forest, Mama Bear comes up pretty
mm.
high on the list.
Interesting, because I go to poisonous creatures immediately.
Oh,
What's the
okay.
most dangerous thing in the forest?
I
Bears are
live in Canada,
problematic.
so we don't have too many poisonous creatures.
Okay, if you had snakes or scorpions or spiders that could bring you down,
Yeah,
do
that's a
do
bit of a,
you in? Those I would say, because
because
bears
those are sneaky. You might not see them.
that's it. Yeah.
But
And
there's
there's
so let's say let's take away dangerous and go with like fiercest.
okay,
No?
cool. Yeah. Because the most dangerous animal in the world is the mosquito. So let's drop dangerous.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
Uh,
But yeah, there's definitely like a fierce quality to this like feminine principle. If anything, like this is another rabbit hole that I don't want to go
that's
totally
good. Yeah, because
down,
it's a deep one.
but it feel like worth saying. I feel like in some ways, like women in general have lost our teeth and claws a little bit, and it
Yeah,
sort of
yeah. And
reflects this like
absolutely.
Venus thing that we see here too.
Absolutely. What's modeled, and this goes again to Disney and the whole social
Hmm.
program for women, the whole narrative for little girls. It's been highly structured and institutionalized to give people the idea to become citizens and to
Hmm.
become, responsible members of polite society. And these are actually valuable messages. But
Hmm.
what's left out is, where's your personhood,
Hmm.
where's your, what is your soul asking for, why are you here? And these are questions that generally men or women today,
Hmm.
or any other gender expression that any person might identify by, that we all have to sort of, the burdens on us to ask these questions, where there's very few institutional. I mean, even Benjamin Franklin said that uh, basically, I'll paraphrase here because I'm not going to get his exact quote right, but he said there's the duty of every citizen, the duty to question authority.
Hmm.
Okay, so that got swept under the rug,
Oh yeah.
but but these ideas have become, I think, a little watered down. So I like that you want to get into the teeth and the meat and what's really going on, because mm, no, I'm going to get ahead of myself if I open that box, because that's a
Okay.
rabbit hole too. Let's save it for later, because
Hmm.
I know what I want to look
I
at,
know
and
there's like
I
threads we
know
can
how
go
we're
down with Aries
I
and
know
Taurus and stuff. One
how
thing
we're going to have to like discover how we're going to get there, right?
I feel like it's hard to talk about Libra without talking about Mot, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
The the goddess who would weigh the hearts against the feather on the entrance to the underworld, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it
Mm-hmm.
has Libra definitely has this vibe of like the
Mm-hmm.
entrance to the underworld. We're not
Oh yeah.
quite
Oh yeah.
into, it's the claws. We're not into the full poison tail yet, but
That's
we're
right.
opening the
That's right.
doors a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great way to look at Libra as sort of scales of judgment, and in the idea of Ma'at is this deity in the afterlife who we meet, and who, takes our heart and
Mm,
weighs it against this feather. And if our heart is heavier than a feather, then I think we're cast into the underworld,
mhm.
which I'm not an expert in the Egyptian Book of the Dead,
Me neither.
but this is the underworld. And from what I understand,
Oh,
some people have told me that they feel that it's talking about cycles of rebirth and reincarnation.
okay,
To
yeah,
just
that makes sense.
to go to the underworld is like you're going back to the mill. You
Yeah,
just grist, you get cycled through until you get to the center of the wheel.
okay, that makes
But
sense.
but the heart that's lighter than Ma'at is like how much of our sort of karmic burden we've resolved,
Mm,
and how, I mean, in a way, it's as simple as how light of heart You know, we are, because you can't really fake that, you know, you
Yeah, I
can't.
feel like there's definitely like a big thread of like integrity there, like that you live by your principles.
Yeah,
Did
and
you?
it has to do with that integrity and other things that we associate with like goodness and ethics, morality, the kind of karmic, like, and again, I want to be really careful here because I'm not an Egyptian. I'm not very knowledgeable in the Egyptian
Yeah,
mystery,
same too.
but
Fair
I've
warning.
talked to some people. I find it very fascinating, the Book of the Dead, because the Tibetan tradition, which I spent years in, has a Book of the Dead. So you know, I'm always curious to talk to people about this, and I think that it's a little bit an idea like you can escape the cycle of cyclical rebirth, a little like the Buddhist or the yogic idea of like samsara as a cycle of suffering that we're compelled along by our heaviness, our darkness, our karmic choices, and then the burdens that we carry that
The
create more
lessons
karma.
that we want to learn, the things we
Right,
need to
right.
experience,
But
even
I
if
think
it'll
it's
push us through the meat grinder.
I think it's the lessons that kind of bring us up in
Mm.
this model, this karmic model, and the sort of like lack of consciousness, just giving into our lower impulses and our animal urges that bring us down on the sort of karmic scale, right? Whether we're going to like you know, continue around on this wheel of existence and what kind of existence we'll have, or whether we're going to like, you know, come to the middle of the wheel, the grist wheel as it were, and like not get ground to pieces, but somehow from that point have a chance to go to like better places that are
Good time
probably,
to step out.
yeah, step out there's always been heavens and numerous heavens and innumerable paradises and places that you can only get to if your heart is of a certain quality, right? You just can't have anyone running around these places, I guess. but no, this is why we can have nice things, because Ma'at keeps these worlds safe, and because the universe is organized along some kind of, you know, very deep, very profound principle
Yeah.
that's pointed to, and I just want to give voice to those Egyptian mysteries, like very respectfully. I would invite actually in the comments anyone who
Yeah.
wants to correct me or Rio on that to please do.
One who has knowledge in this
Yeah,
tradition more, if you've got
yeah,
thoughts.
yeah, very much just students there, just barely baby learners. So thanks for understanding that.
Yeah, there's definitely you know, this like thread of justice runs strong in
Hmm.
Libra, right?
Yeah,
I feel like I'll
yeah.
get to this more when we're talking about the Taurus Libra axis, but that's
Hmm.
definitely
Hmm.
definitely a part of it, right? What
Yeah,
are our
value
principles?
systems, right, right,
What do
right.
we fight for, you know?
That's it. That's it. Yeah, and whether you have them on axis, Taurus or Libra, as opposites, which they do, the constellations of Libra and Taurus do naturally oppose each other in the sky, which I can we'll have to get to that in this conversation too.
Yeah.
That whether you have that in an axis or not, anytime you're dealing with both those archetypes, you're dealing with rulership by Venus. So there's like automatically or just very naturally a similarity.
Hmm. And it brings
S-
in questions of values
yeah, right. And
that we're
that's
talking
just it.
Venus.
Venus is dealing with,
Hmm.
right, value systems.
Hmm. All right. So you said that you had some thoughts about sort of the transition from like Libra into Scorpio. Or what would
Yeah,
you
yeah.
say is like if we could give Libra a particular like function, what is it as a stage of life
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
or evolution?
I like to use the language it wants, signs want, they seek, because a
Mm,
process is driven by an urge, right? And a
yeah,
sign is a process. What's the urge?
process. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, well, Libra,
Mhm.
Libra. So we talked about this actually really like the extremes that we encounter in Libra, and a lot of challenges for all people have an idea that it's Venusian and nice and lovey-dovey. But what Libra wants out of all that is to become aware of other people's needs.
Mm,
This is really to be able to truly listen to others is actually, um in Virgo, we learn, in simple terms, we learn service, we learn how to be useful, we learn how to be part of a group by by fitting in, which is different from the Aries to Leo, and we talked about that last video.
It's
So
interesting, actually, if we're going
yeah,
to be
yeah, go
touching
ahead.
on Virgo. I think one of the other issues that Libra gets is it's very much like, it gets the stereotype of like wishy-washy and like fence sitter. And I feel like
Mm,
some of this
mhm,
actually comes from like what's actually more Virgo energy
mm.
a little bit.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I'm trying
Because
to
in
remember.
Virgo, I feel like there's a little bit more natural inclination to just be like, you know what? It's like that humility, like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'll just go along.
Mm,
I'm gonna be helpful. I don't
yeah, yeah,
gotta,
yeah, yeah.
it
Well,
is more of a position.
the relationship with Pisces does make Virgo subject to that just sort of
Mhm,
confusion and indecisiveness. Libra does have a reputation for, actually, the word that I think of often is vacillation, not being
mhm.
able to choose, not being
Yeah.
able to decide. And I think of Libra as opposite to Aries. And one of the things Aries is just very, is almost like pre-decision. It's just a
Mhm,
primordial urge. It's not like there's no deciding, it's instinctual, right? So I think with Libra's subject to that, I wouldn't know honestly which one would be, because one, Pisces goes one way and then
mhm,
the other, Aries, goes the other way, and dealing with oppositions to them in Virgo and Libra, I'm not sure. So what I would do when I'm not sure is get out my Almagest, and I would see what Claudius Ptolemy said about Libra. If he said that it was of the nature of like vacillation and indecisiveness,
mhm,
I would say at the time of his writings, they were looking at actual Libra.
mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's one of
that's
the
fair.
virtues of going back to the ancient works, because what he says is actually true to this guy and stands on the foundation of the Library of Alexandria and a lot of tradition from various cultures. So I love,
And
yeah, yeah.
for anyone who's watching this that maybe isn't as familiar with like constellational astrology, the reason why I bring it up is because in mainstream astrology, Libra season is actually still within the constellation of Virgo. So that's why I
Hmm.
think things have slipped. But
Entirely within
yeah.
the constellation of Virgo. Yeah.
Hmm. But yeah, that's a really good idea for how to go back and suss it out a little bit for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I would look at Libra and I would look at Virgo in Ptolemy's writings, and I would I would see where he mentioned those traits or traits similar to those, or just see like where was this idea originally, because a lot of astrology now has been adjusted, because what we see is, as the sun is or as we come along to tropical Libra season, when we look at the sun is in the stars of Virgo, as you mentioned, Rio, that entire month of October and late October and late September and early and
Mm,
mid October. So because the sun's in Virgo there now, a lot of people, tropicalists, are sort of noticing these qualities, but they're ascribing them to Libra. And that's just to add on to your like kind of
mhm.
caveat, as it were. So
Yeah.
thanks everyone who's not a constellational astrologer. There's a lot here for everybody. So
Mm.
this is applicable. Stay and listen. Don't leave because we do it differently.
So how does Libra prepare us for Scorpio?
Yeah, yeah, that's the question. So we talked about extreme. Scorpio's extreme. Scorpio is going to give you extremes. Yeah, Scorpio is almost never not extreme. So in Libra, we encounter the various extremes, right? The different sides of the dichotomies. And we have to find, what we need to find is actually our center in that, you know? And when, you know, so when you went down that sort of Virgo rabbit hole, I was talking about Aries to Leo, and I want to kind of just dovetail back to that very briefly because it sets the stage for Virgo.
Okay.
So Aries to Leo, we're developing ego, we're developing self. This is all subjective. It's about my experience, what I want, what I believe, how I communicate, who are my people, what do I love, what is this? And then Virgo
What's the mission?
Virgo's like, bam, get to work. Right. What's your missions? And once you find it, then Virgo's like, all right, accomplish it. So that leads into a situation where now Libra is starting another cycle. Aries and Libra, this is one of the only ways that Aries and Libra are the same, right? Because they're very, very, very different. Mars and Venus, very different. But Aries and Libra are the same in that they both start cycles. And it's not because they're cardinal signs. It's because they follow the two transitional weirdos, Pisces and Virgo. So after Pisces, after Pisces, Aries represents the urge to separate, right? And you have that urge and it develops into an ego, Leo, a fully formed ego capable of maintaining its space and drawing its boundaries, doing its thing, accomplishing its work. So then you have Virgo. And now, once you master and get through Virgo and you've become helpful, useful, able to be of service, able to make things better, we start a whole new cycle. So it's not about people. It's not about relationships. It's not about balances. It's just, consider it a catalyst for if the whole bottom half of the chart, looking at the houses, is about subjective experience and selfhood, Libra initiates. So it's like mind blown already. You go from Virgo to Libra and it's like a big new world, and it's objective. It's so objective, and it starts with other people, but then it goes, you know, through to the 10th and 11th house of society and the species and our group, our group.
It does sort of feel like the doorway to society a little bit. Like we've been figuring out all of this, and now it's time to like show up as an adult in a community of other people.
That's it. And people will hold us to that. Older people will hold us to that, and society in general will hold us to that. Yeah.
Whereas like the previous, you know, processes, it's not like we're not interacting with other people, but it's much more of like on a like familial sort of like closeness level.
That's just it, Rio. That's exactly it. Because when we're doing a Leo thing, when we're listening to others, we're hearing through this Leo. We're just hearing what we want to hear a lot of times. And this isn't to say Leos do this, but if we're just isolating Leo and we're just in Leo and we're in Leo's mode of consciousness, we're hearing differently, because Libra wants to really hear what others are saying. And you can't do that when there's so much ego in the way. So Virgo has to beat you down and chop you up and run you over and back up and run you over again and really chew you up and spit you out for you to get soft and cooked and tempered. And then we get interested. And from that point, to what you were saying, we can listen to what others are truly saying, and we can give them what they really need, rather than what we think we would want if we were them, which is huge. So that's part of Libra's process. That's major. It's totally distinct from Virgo, and it's totally distinct from the whole previous cycle. So Libra ends up being really weird, because you come out of the gate, and you're now entering into a whole new paradigm for which you have no experience. So it's another just very difficult thing. But those qualities of starting like a cycle of self and a cycle of other, right? That eventually takes us to Pisces and like the universe, God, cosmos, absorption into other to become totally, to realize that all is one. And then out of that, when you're saturated in that for a while, boom, Aries, urge to separate. So I've had enough of floating around in this bliss. I want to have an adventure. Enough of this. Yeah.
Adventure time.
Adventure time. Yeah, yeah.
And
The
I
only
feel
other
like,
way I can think of that Aries and Mars are similar, the only other way, sorry, I said Aries and Mars. I've been burning the wick doing this moving and painting and stuff, man. I'm burning the wick at both ends. But the only other way I can think of that Aries and Libra are the same is that they're both distinctly sexual. They're each about sexual processes. Libra is more about appreciation and the romantic.
yeah, a little bit of like the mental aspect a bit more,
Very mental, yeah.
which is still part of it, right?
Oh,
Right.
big part. And Aries is about libido and the erotic.
Fire.
Yeah.
Just want to go for it.
Yeah. But you know, there is a bit of appreciation in Aries, but again, it's a little bit like listening from a Leo point of view. Like Aries appreciates what it appreciates, but only because it turns Aries on.
Yeah, for sure.
Libra appreciates because it wants to understand, like
wants to see how everything like fits in the big puzzle. Beautiful little parts together.
Even gets interested in, well, what turns you on. You know, that would be a Libran question. So the sexual nature, and we talked about how we talked. I always like to mention that, Venus had like claws and teeth and this real martial side. And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that Mars and Aries can really be the sign of like the farmer, the father, the builder, the responsible man. Like that urge exists. That urge that urge can be an Aries urge, right? And if Aries is supported by positive, responsible forces, Jupiter and Saturn in nice relationship, or maybe, I mean, there's all kind of things. We don't have to hypothesize, but when Aries is supported and nourished and nurtured, his healthy expression is not always sex and violence, and because Aries has a reputation. Aries has a reputation because it just follows its impulse. It's just an impulse. It's like, I have a cat who's an Aries cat. It just doesn't listen. It'll look at you while it like knocks stuff off the table. It's a ginger too. It's so Aries. It's actually my girlfriend's cat, but since I live with it and I feed it, it's not. It's not. But it's such an Aries. Yeah. And it's like then this other cat that I live with is like really the other side of that divide, the Mars Venus divide, because the Venus is like, I was just like delicate and gentle, tactful, artful, diplomatic, just like refined, sense of sophisticated. These are Venusian qualities, even when she has her sword out. I mean, there is like
an artfulness about it.
Sure. Venus has always been very, very much that. And Mars has always been, for better or worse, pretty blunt and raw and unfortunately forceful and unsophisticated, sort of savage. So again, every sign, we're talking Aries and Libra here, the Mars-Venus dichotomy. Every sign has what the opposite sign needs. So if we're in Libra and we're finding ourselves confused maybe by extremes, and we having a hard time deciding, we're in a new world, a new paradigm, even we probably don't realize it, and we're having a Libra experience. Yeah, I honestly, I forget where I was going with that.
Okay.
Thanks. If you don't edit that out, then friends, I haven't been sleeping as much lately as I would like. And if you do, thanks. But I don't actually know. And I just forget where I was going with that. We're talking about the
Well, that's okay.
delicate and sophisticated,
You were talking
like,
about the
and the blunt and the
having what it
raw.
needs, the
Right,
oppositions.
right.
Yeah.
Amazing. So right. When you're having that Libra experience and what you need is to find your center
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of all these extremes or intense experiences. It's actually, we can go back to that Aries impulse,
Mm-hmm.
that original primordial urge, because that is in many ways our center.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually bringing that self all the way around the dance floor to Libra to inhabit that space. It's like an I thou relationship. But even in Libra, you have those same urges. You have those same, you are the same person. A chart is holistic. We all have Aries and Libra in our makeup. So
Well, if we
that's, I
think
think, the
about
point
it,
I was, yeah.
if we think about it in a sense of like what the other needs, once we get into this process where we're actually starting to interact with other people, a little bit of that like bluntness, that ability to like cut through the bullshit is
Mhm.
actually quite necessary. If we want to like build a society with other people, we got to be able to be honest, you know?
Especially after Virgo.
And like, if we
Yeah.
want to actually have something called integrity, it requires being honest not only with ourselves but with other people as well.
That's it.
Mhm.
That's it. That's it. Because that's what we learn in Virgo is honesty, integrity, the good things, the right things, do the right thing, take the high road.
Mhm.
And then, yeah. It's what it's I have like three thoughts at once. But it's what happens when you find yourself having moved through that Virgo phase of like your life, or maybe a season of your life, or whatever it is, and you come out of the gate, is you need to orient yourself again. You need to find yourself. You need to balance that Libra and that Aries. And it's a difficult balance. Like I was saying, they don't have a lot in common, and they're sort of total opposites, but they do each have their positive sides, and the Venus positive side is not just, a nice, sensitive society lady. And Mars positive side is not just that he's somehow killing the right people or something. There's much more, right?
Yeah, for sure. Where did I want to go next here? One thing, well, I guess we're already in the opposition. Let's stay on one track, but I wonder a little bit if there isn't like a little bit more instinct involved in Libra than we give it credit for sometimes. It's quite
Like, because
heady.
it's an air sign, it gets an intellectual rap.
Yeah, which isn't wrong,
Yeah,
right? But,
yeah.
there definitely is, this like aligning with values. I feel like we can see the connection between like processes of justice in many ways, like whether like from a mundane way, Libra is associated with like actual like legal proceedings and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah.
Then we got the Taylor Ma'at. Then it's associated with like judgment if we look at the tarot judgment, and like sure, part of, if we're looking at like legal proceedings, let's say, part of that is like how was the law written, right? But like below that, on a more on like a deeper level, I feel like it's connected to more of a little bit of like instinctual process of like what is good and evil a little bit, you know.
Mm.
If we to jump back a tiny bit, you know,
It's
like
it's yeah. Oh, go ahead.
um you know, if we're looking at like the process into Scorpio a little bit, one thing that I think about the Scorpio myth, the Grecian one anyways, sometimes about how
Mm.
you know, Scorpio was the scorpion that was sent to take down Orion when
Mm.
he had just gotten like way too big for his britches and was like, I'm gonna show off that I can kill every creature in the forest. And instead of like sending a warrior at them, they're like, all right, Scorpion, go take this guy down, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
from a process point of view, it's like Libra is where we make the judgment of like, okay, this is what's working, this is what's not working, this is what's true, this is what's like been built on a tower of nothing, you know.
Yeah.
And then as we
Yeah.
move into the Scorpio process, it's time for the execution a little bit.
Yeah. I think that, not really having a definitive, way of looking at that, that
Yeah,
stumps a lot of people, and I think it's
you know
nice
me, I
to
like to
talk
wax
to you.
poetic a little.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's like I love that about you, and I think we share that, is we don't seem to need things to make the exact, perfect total sense. Like Libra is always Libra and it's always like this, and Scorpios, because I mean, there's different ways of looking at it. And
Mhm.
it's not that you have to look at it and take everything into consideration or both ways at once, but I think I think
What do you
that's interesting, but it's an aside. And what I wanted to say was to your idea that the Libran impulse is instinctual. Um, I think you could make a case that as you move through these kind of archetypal experiences, like a Libra experience, a Libra phase, if you're a Libra person, if you just life is colored by Libra, if you look at those processes, I think that moving through them, you find a sort of instinctive, like late Libra, I think is instinctive and balanced.
Hmm.
It's a little bit like Aries, although Aries isn't so concerned with balance because it's so singular and just only in its own center, moving out. There's, it's already balanced. By the time we
Hmm.
get complex enough to approach Libra, I think it's a lot more delicate, the system that we have to balance. I think there is some instinct there, but I don't think it's anywhere near as instinctual as Aries.
I mean, I suppose the argument could be made that the entire process is instinctual, right? We complete the one, we move into the next. That's sort of how it goes.
That's
I mean,
fair. Yeah. In a
Aries is
way, it all.
excessively so.
In a
Uh,
way, it all is. In a way, it all is.
mm,
But I think we can look at Libra, and it sort of has this quality of sophistication.
mhm.
And I think that when we look at Mars and Aries, and we see a quality of unsophisticated,
Mm.
sort of excuse me, I'm not laughing at anything unsophisticated. That was just a random cough. But um it's it lends itself more, the unsophisticated, the raw, the primordial, to instinct. And I think you could even say that it is that thing, that raw primordial thing that arises might be instinct, where Libra, I think, might be a search for return to instinct
Mm.
from a point where we're a
Yeah,
little bit like
yeah.
trying to figure everything out, maybe overly mental, not necessarily, but
We've
but
like done our personal process, and now it's like, okay, it's time to like reintegrate, how do we
Yeah. And that's Libra's process. Early Libra and late Libra, they're two different nakshatras. They're two different processes. It's really interesting. But I would also sort of add on that it's all on the way to Scorpio. So there's a need because Scorpio's the water and the depth. You're just forced. Scorpio will strip you of everything but instinct.
Mhm.
And in a way, Mars was the ancient ruler of it. It has this sort of very raw quality.
I
And if we
always
look
find
at the
very worth
whole,
mentioning.
yeah, thanks. And if we look at the Libra Scorpio as one process, right, one archetype,
Mhm.
we sort of have like a little bit of a gentle entry into this thing, and then it intensifies as we approach Antares. Where things are generally like just rendered into something else, and that process often returns us to our instinctive sense of self. That's one of the great things about the eighth house, is it just boom, right to the core, right to the soul, right to the root.
Because really, like this whole first process of like finding out who we are, developing that, on one hand, it is like, I feel like we go through it in the search for truth, but we're also like building something that'll like get us to where we want. We think it's the truth, but at times it can be like what we think we need to be in order to get something. And then this process of learning to like actually listen to other people and learning to like actually take in information and like be a part of things brings us in like much deeper connection with the actual truth. And then once we encounter that truth,
That's it.
shit's gotta fall away. And that's more is like the
That's
Scorpios.
it. And what's falling away is the whole early process, right? That's just like, and then what happens? Ninth house, you get into like, wow, the world is so much bigger than me, right? There's more Horatio than what's in front of, there's what, I forget the quote, but there's more going on in this world than like you could ever comprehend. I think it's a Shakespeare line. It's not a quote. Well, it's a quote of Shakespeare, but that's and all of that's coming from Virgo. So Virgo, like Libra, is overly mental, where Libra is just kind of mental. Virgo is totally mental. And then Scorpio, we get return to instinct, and that's that Libran process, whether you look at it as a separate Venusian relationship process, which it does take that form. It is about relationships. Interestingly, that's just like kind of catching caught in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I think the thing, once you like start to get into and practice more constellational astrology, is that the fact is it's a lot more fluid than mainstream makes it out to be. Like there are spaces, there are cusps where we're not really in any stars.
It's true, Rio. There's gray area and
there's specific stars that will have like intense influence that are just like one star of the whole constellation. So it is more of a like fluid process than like the neat little boxes we sometimes put them in.
Right.
Which I think is beautiful.
I do too. And just like one of the differences in we were just talking about, it was at the end of Virgo, the opposition is to Aries. So we go through all this opposition Pisces, and then just at the end, an opposition to Aries finishes up Virgo. So why is that? Are we sort of refreshing, touching back on ourselves before we it's almost like a return home. And Libra's the same way. Libra is an Aries process, but then at the end it finishes up with Taurus. And the part of it that finishes up with Taurus is the part that I actually consider to be like mature and balanced.
Mm.
And that axis is totally ruled by Venus. But that's not why I feel it's mature and balanced. It's just that at that point, people have been through the degrees of Libra, the early degrees and the nakshatra. And the nakshatra of early Libra is interesting.
Mhm.
It's I want to say Vishaka, which means the fork, the split.
Oh, that's
Right,
interesting because I feel like
right.
the like Aries Libra process is like I wanna it almost feels like I want to get to know myself by getting to know other people. Like
That's
how am
it.
I
That's it.
different
Yeah,
from
that's
others?
it. And Libra learns by listening to other people. It's not just hearing
Yeah.
what people are actually saying, it's getting other points of view,
Mm.
which is
Like
generally not what the first
feeling the
signs.
difference.
Yeah. Comparing the difference. That's what we master critical analysis in Virgoan processes, so that in Libran experiences we have that we have that, so that when we're actually hearing what people are saying, we can put that information in the right place, and
Mhm.
we can do the responsible thing with it.
And it feels like that Aries, that like tiny little Aries opposition at the end of Virgo is important too, right? Because I feel like in Virgo, we can have too much of a good thing and you can get to the point where you start like giving yourself away a little bit too much.
Mm.
And you have to remember, like, oh, there is a mission. It might not be, it might not look the way we thought it once would look. It has to
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
involve all of these other people. But
Yeah,
like
this
there
get
is,
this yeah, go ahead, please.
there is like something within ourselves that needs to still be expressed. So how do we bring this into the land of like living in a society?
Right.
So it feels like
how do we
almost
bring
the
it down to earth?
trigger to like, oh, like let's start getting to know people and stuff like that,
Yeah.
whereas once we get into the opposition with Libra Venus, we've had all of these experiences of like listening to other people, getting to know the other,
Mm,
seeing all of these contrasts. Then we can actually take
mhm.
that and integrate it into our values and be like, okay, like
Yeah,
what do I care
that's it.
about? What matters?
That's it, right? What out of what I've seen, like where am I going to invest my energy, my
Mm,
time, my resources, my interest, what am I doing with this? That's all about, resources, values, relationship, all that second, eighth house stuff. That Libra Taurus axis in late Libra is as similar
mm-hmm,
as Libra Aries is different. So I think it's an interesting thing about Libra when you start to look at oppositions, that like the process of Libra opens up with like us realizing how little we know about anyone else but ourselves. It's often a sort of awkward. Early Libra can be crises of codependency
yeah,
often, but just to say that it's rarely working out, the relationship thing in early Libra. That's more like a promise of lessons
mm-hmm,
that force you to find your center. And then all of that process opposes Aries. And then as we move into late Libra, where we have balance,
mm-hmm,
we've established a center, and it is our values, it's our sense of self,
mm-hmm.
uh in an objective awareness. Now that we know, oh wow, other people are totally different, right? And
Yeah,
astrology is like the pinnacle of that. Like, seeing a chart, it's like, well, there's just infinite
yeah,
combinations of possible. How, I mean, people could be anything. A person doesn't mean
yeah,
anything. Someone's a person, they could be anybody. And it's just, that's such an infinite spectrum. It's exciting. But in Libra, through encountering those and having experiences with other people, we come to see, like, it's that Aries Libra axis that challenges us to figure out who we are in that. And then the Taurus, I really feel, just like you were saying, kind of refreshes on bringing it home. And it's a stabilizing in our values, stabilizing in our internal ethics often, the late Libra is very, it's very, there's a word, it's also, so it's a Virgo word, it's a principle.
Yeah.
It's Capricorn word too.
Mhm.
Principled. Late Libras can be very principled because they know they're about to get torn to pieces, like deep in their instincts. They can, Scorpio's right around the corner, and like everybody fears it.
Yeah.
Death in their bone marrow, not
Oh
like
yeah.
in their conscious mind, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's all interesting about those Aries Taurus oppositions. And I agree with you. Yeah, pretty much everything I said was just me agreeing with everything you said. So
And if we talk about how it is different, Taurus is just like much more self-contained, right? It's a lot more concerned with like being able to rely on itself and like building that sort of like center relationship.
right.
But it still does have that like values, right? It's almost, it Libra feels like a little bit of a like an evolution of that, right? Where like we figure it out in Taurus what we value, but we're sort of on an island a little bit because that process of like being able to rely on ourselves becomes quite important in Taurus. Whereas in Libra, it's like, oh no, we're part of something bigger,
Right.
And it's a little
Exactly.
more
And
like
that only grows. That Libra and part of something bigger only grows in ninth house, 10th house, 11th house, 12th house, the cosmos. Again, this is just, and this is something else that we all know in our bones too, when we have our mind blown in a Libran way, is like, this is the tip of the iceberg. So Libra is pretty interesting quality for a Venusian sign that we tend to think of as so like demure and polite, and
yeah, for sure. And we did actually just have a for those who are like wondering about the sort of classic opposition, we did just have an eclipse where sun was in Libra, moon was in Aries. It's the last one. Let's see, it happened on the 8th, early in the morning.
That's right.
So these are kind of energies that are quite alive at the moment.
And that's true. That was 3 days ago.
And actually, if anyone wants to know a little bit more about that, Rebecca from Pillars of the Moon did a really, really good video.
Yes.
I loved it because she like pulled up stellarium and showed Aries, because Aries is actually like a really interesting part of the sky. It's not really on the ecliptic.
And the sun doesn't go through.
Right? Like it's kind of up there. If the sun goes like through here, Aries is up here. Cetus is down here.
Cetus, the head of Cetus, right?
Yeah. She made some really interesting points that have certainly been influencing my thought pattern about how, in Pisces, we're sort of like in the all of everything, right? And Aries is like the gate that we pass through, and we talk about Aries from like a very instinctual point of view. It's almost like a birth canal, right? Like the baby doesn't like mentally necessarily like know what's going on, and it just goes for it, figures it out,
and totally. That's a great example. Pisces is like the spirit, and then
right,
descent thing, right?
And really, if we're thinking about like just what you were saying about like Mars and being like, quote, unsophisticated and like blunt, and that I was just thinking about all the sort of, if we think about it as like a birth canal sort of situation, I was just thinking about the kind of paradox of it, of like it just happens. And like you could see it as unsophisticated, you could see it as like the instinct of like forever built in our bones.
It's true. And you could ask a very good question, which is at that point of actual childbirth, does it matter what you think? Is it sophisticated or unsophisticated?
It's happening.
No, it just happens. It's just raw. It's just bam. And that's so Aries so much.
Right.
It's like sort of before all the questioning and the logic and the examination.
It's just happening.
Yeah.
Do we feel like we have covered the differences, similarities, Aries well enough?
I do. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. And how about Taurus Venus? Or sorry, Taurus Libra.
Taurus, Libra. Yeah, I think, what did
Venusian
we talk
axis.
about that? We talked about it's a Venusian axis and it's that
Mhm.
late Libra axis. So from that point of view of having balance, right,
Mhm.
late, then we could say, well, what's needed, and we can look across the sky to early Taurus, and it's just, there's always this sort of bouncing back and forth as bodies move around, and I think that sort of ping is just reminding us to sort of hard code, like you were saying, and a value system and ethics, because Aries doesn't have one yet. So when we get there, it's like, oh, let's commit this and codify this into something I'm going to live by, like at least a credo or at least a motto. Please, like, have a motto. Everybody have a motto. Excelsior. And that's mine. And yeah, that just, again, is preparing for Scorpio. I want to say as a Libra Taurus axis being Venusian, I think the one word that we haven't really talked about, this Venusian word, is appreciation. It's all about discovering what we appreciate. In Taurus, it's because it's more inward looking, and we're discovering our own, ethics, values.
Mhm.
And in Libra, we're looking at the smorgasbord
Mhm.
of humans and other kinds of creatures you can have relationship with, and we're discovering kind of, so one's oriented inward, the other's oriented outward, but it's appreciation, right? Libra and Taurus have this in common. So yeah, and I think we did talk about everything else. Looking at my notes, yeah, everything has already been mentioned.
Yeah, I feel like this was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ria.
Well, thank you. Thank you for chatting with me as always. Is there anything you want to share with everyone? You're pretty busy, hey? Don't have much.
Oh,
Will you be
I'm so
reopening
busy.
books?
I'm so busy. I can't wait to get back to making monthly lunar cycle videos. Friends, I have a channel, my own YouTube channel at One Sky Astrology, and I have a practice. I do consultation, chart work, natal charts and transits, and all the usual astrology stuff. My site is oneskyastro.com. I'll be back to making videos probably next year, 2023. January. It's going to take a while to set up after this move, and I'm going to give myself that time. So I'm sort of stepping away, taking a little bit of a break, and I thank you, Rio, for the opportunity to share that with everyone.
Of course, yeah. And in that vein, actually, I'm kind of doing the same. I'm pregnant right now, and that has taken my energy levels from like here to here. So yeah, I'm gonna try and do emails and stuff like that, but I've been kind of patchy with it, and I just ask everyone's patience with me, because I'm gonna be stepping away a little bit. And if any of you have ordered the calendar, please your email. All right. Well, thank you for joining me today, Michael, and I will see you again pretty soon, I guess, probably for our
Yeah, these are
Scorpio talk.
short seasons.
Yeah.
So we'll do some Scorpio when the time is right, and I will. Let's be right around the corner. So I'll see you soon.
All right.
I'll see
We'll see all
everybody.
y'all soon.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.